me every secret. Said that I care, asked do you mean it? It's been months since we've been okay. I'm putting off what's coming. Another night staring at the ceiling. You deserve to be alone, to be the one they're always thinking of. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you. I admit that I ignored it. You deserve to be alone. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be Struggling 'cause I'm all you had. You should know that's all in your head. 'Cause it's been weeks and you're not okay. You're putting off what's coming. It's alright to be scared of being lonely. Don't you know that you deserve to be alone, to be the one they're always thinking of? And I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you. Admit that I ignored it. You deserve to be alone. You deserve to be loved.
Hello?
Hello.
How you doing, Steph?
I am doing. How are you doing?
I'm doing. This is amazing. You're on
Excellent.
time for once.
What?
You're always late. It's every
That's
stream.
rude.
I'm like, well, Steph isn't here yet, so we're gonna go play Do or Try Gordo, you know?
That's
This
rude.
This time you actually, you were like on Discord messaging me before the stream started. Or before our
Rude.
section started. Yeah, Luijo is enthusiastically pointing out to me that he redeems Save a Child's Life in real life. Every time someone does that, we donate $5 to the Against Malaria Foundation, which provides mosquito nets to children at risk of malaria. So, Luijo, you just save a child's life in real life. Then Chalkard did the same thing, so he also saves a child's life in real life.
So many child's lives in real life.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
How many children are left that we haven't saved? Before I don't have to
It
do
doesn't
this
seem
anymore.
like there should be any more at
Yeah,
this point.
we probably got all of them at this point.
Yeah,
right?
probably all of them. Probably all of them. Good job. Good job, team.
Um,
I like your joke where you said it's always the few hundred times.
yeah.
Hundredth
It's always
time
few
that gets
hundredth
you.
time
I like that.
gets you.
It's hard to say, but it's funny.
I recently, like when I say recent, maybe half a year ago, got a new phone.
Okay.
My old phone, I don't know what it is, but like a lot of my phones, the battery starts expanding after a few years,
Yeah.
and like the case, I guess, cracks open.
Yeah, mine delaminated as well.
What does delaminate mean? Is that the name for battery expansion?
Yep. And it causes the phone in places where it's supposed to stay together, where it's supposed to be laminated, it causes it to become unlaminated.
Okay.
Delaminated, as it were.
Yeah. So I got a new phone. Most of my old phones were Androids. This new one is an iPhone, because supposedly the iPhone had had some capability for VTuber model tracking.
Okay.
But I did not find it to work that well.
Okay.
The VTuber tracking, so I don't use it. I just use my normal webcam.
Okay.
And overall, I don't like the way the iPhone works relative to the Android, like the OS, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to share my screen with Steph right now. Hey, Dragonflare. Dragonflare says iPhone is ass except for its face tracking. Yeah, that supposedly, but then I couldn't get the face tracking to work well with my VTuber software. So like, it's not, I don't even use like the hardware.
You didn't
for
even get the one benefit.
Yeah, exactly. The iPhone hardware is good at tracking because they have an app for face tracking in the iPhone itself. And I move my face around, and like the virtual face in the iPhone, moves around in a lot of detail. So I'm like, okay, yeah. So the iPhone knows like it's capable of tracking my face very well, but it is unable to send that information to the computer to then tell my 3D model how to move around. And it's like, I think a little bit worse than what my webcam does. So I just use my webcam. I'm sure it's a me problem. Like I need to figure out how to make the data get sent over or whatever, but I haven't been able to figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like one of the things that annoys me a lot with the iPhone is that it uses like a face print for locking.
Yeah.
So when you press the unlock button on your phone, it uses the camera to scan your face. At you. And
yeah.
if that works, then it unlocks. Otherwise, you have to type in your password.
Right.
On my Android, it's like a fingerprint reader. When you press the unlock button, because your finger's there, it reads your finger and says, "Okay, that's you," and then unlocks. And shamefully, I use my phone a lot, like at night, like 3 a.m. while I'm trying to sleep / not sleep.
Sure.
And there's no light, so the camera every time it says, "Yeah, I can't tell that it's you," like. So every time I have to enter in my password.
I have a very hard time, like a peasant. Oh my god, that's terrible. I can't get fingerprint recognizers to recognize my fingers.
Okay.
My laptop and my phone both use that, and I would say it's 25% of the time that they're like, yeah, that's your fingerprint, and the rest of the time they're like, obviously you're a fraud. And it doesn't, like, I've had it on many other devices as well. Like, my fingerprints just don't register very well, and my face doesn't register particularly well either. And so what I'm trying to ask is, am I a ghost?
You might be a vampire.
I show up in mirrors just fine.
Well, then maybe point the webcam at the mirror and
see if that works. Yeah, alright.
Alright, hang on. Let me catch your chat here. Nebu, every time someone chats, my scroll scrolls to the bottom to see what the new thing is. So I'm trying to read the text that was up there, but then they keep talking, and it scrolls down. Nebu, Steph, you smart people, I want to see if you get this part of my homework right. Neither my sister nor my mother is / are selling the car. So I guess it's a grammar thing, right?
Okay.
The fact
you're trying to ask which one it is.
Well, okay, now he's saying sisters is supposed to be plural, but in the original example it's singular, I think, unless I'm misreading it. Gosh darn it. Let me just catch up with chat. The plural doesn't change anything, says Dragonflare. My duration of the sentence would have is as the result. Neither my sisters nor my mother are going to sell the car. Okay. I think I would. I have an answer. What's your answer, Steph?
So the way that you figure it out is insert the phrase, the person who. So you say, neither my sister nor my mother is the person who is going to sell the car. But you would say, neither my mother nor my sisters are the person who is selling the car. Like, you'll do it automatically. So that's the way to
Wait, what's the difference
solve
between the sentence where you said is versus are?
if it's sisters plural.
So if it was sister singular, you would say is?
If it was sister singular, you would say is, correct.
Neither my
mother nor is the person who is selling the car.
My instinct was to say are, but if I use person, I probably would use is.
Mm-hmm.
But what about like neither Alice nor Bob?
Is the person.
Okay. But so what you're saying is at least one element has to be plural? Like it's because sisters is plural that in
it's
this
because
case.
sisters is plural, correct. So if you said neither Alice nor the Bobs are the person, you would say are in that case.
Okay. I was just thinking earlier yesterday, about talking about prescriptivism as classism, like the idea that people who care a lot about what the right, like about something being right or wrong, are doing so that they can separate like highly educated people from less educated people, like a signaling thing. And with the implication like this is bad, right, in the same way that racism is bad, and so on. But I haven't fully fleshed out the idea for like a blog post or whatever.
So Pierre Bourdieu, the socialist social critic, theorist, would say that you are signaling your level of cultural capital when you're a prescriptivist, and say it should be spoken like that and not like, for example, Black Standard English, even though Black Standard English is perfectly grammatical, perfectly consistent, perfectly understandable, that sort of thing. And that you're signaling your cultural capital in much the same way that you might signal your economic capital by saying this is good fashion and this isn't. Like this nice bag is fashionable and those Crocs you bought at Costco are not. Yeah. And so Bourdieu would agree with you, but he would also say that playing the game is inescapable. You can't ever not. Even when you're signaling that you don't think it's good to be a prescriptivist, by knowing what prescriptivist means, you're kind of signaling your cultural capital.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there is a distinction on mine, because in one case, like having the label prescriptivist is like it has a semantic usefulness, right? Like there is a concept out there that we want to access in Platonic space.
Absolutely.
But
we don't
R doesn't really have this semantic usefulness where like if I use the wrong one, I mean something different from if I had used the other one.
Yes. What I was trying to do with my grammar rule is what I am often trying to... I get a lot of questions about grammar because I help people write reports. That's one of the main things I do in my job, is help them write in a way that's understandable. And I'm not trying to be prescriptivist or descriptivist, really. What I'm trying to do is help people access the less conscious part of their brain that already knows the answer, at least for them. It already knows what to do. It's your basal ganglia. It's the habit system of your brain that has already learned what is the right answer most of the time. And so I help people also figure out whether to, like, how to, for people who use they, them pronouns, Do you say they are going to the store or they is going to the store, given that they're singular, right? And I try and help people figure out the solution that will help their basal ganglia just sort of automatically know what feels right, with the caveat of what feels right for you. You may speak a different version of English than I do. So if somebody comes to me speaking Black Standard English, they may answer the question in a slightly different way. But by adding or subtracting a phrase, we can often make it into a problem that our basal ganglia is very familiar with. We were kind of doing a similar thing last time when we were talking about the Watson selection test and how if you make it a social problem, humans can instantly figure it out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you make it, yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm not like accusing you of being classist or
Right,
anything
right.
like that. But my point is that, like making people aware that this is like, it's not,
Yeah.
like, don't feel bad about being wrong in a sense, because it's
Right.
not that big a deal. But also, like, if you're, if you're in school and you're learning English, it's good to know this so that you can play the game, because some people are going to be classist. Some people are going to be
Yeah,
racist.
that's true.
Like you're
true.
a future employer, so you want to maximize the chance you get the job. So you write it, in a certain way in English, so that you appear to be high class in their eyes, and then you get the job, that type of thing.
Right. But weirdly, like, humans know a lot about grammar that they don't even know that they know. Like, there's a very specific order in which you can put adjectives in English that sounds normal, and any deviation from it sounds insane.
I'm skeptical of that. I know the example you were talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know it by
Yeah.
heart, but I've seen it.
Right.
And I feel like it might be selected. Like,
It's not
like
perfect,
if you had
right?
a different example, then you
But
could swap the order around the adjectives, and it wouldn't be a big deal.
It's pretty close, but there's a lot of things that people, lots of people don't know what a gerund is and yet make them perfectly fine. So there's a lot of things about grammar that as a native speaker, without being able to articulate why something sounds right.
Yeah.
And also, very few grammar concepts are set completely in stone. There's always exceptions, and also areas that just haven't been settled yet. So there's the is versus are that we're talking about, probably isn't perfectly settled. Probably a true linguist would say that both are acceptable, or that both are acceptable under certain circumstances, or that 90% of the time casual speakers use X, but 10% of the time they use something else, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I encountered another like oddity, I guess, in the rules recently today. I saw something called like, "What's that spell?" Like that sentence, like, and it's like it's a song, and they're cheering like "F-U-C-K." What's that spell?
Okay.
Apostrophe S. What is that? That's ownership, or is, right? Surely, because that's what.
Often.
But in this case, like, what is that spell? That doesn't make sense, right? Like, surely what they're saying is, what does that spell?
Right.
And they're abbreviating "does" with apostrophe S. What's that spell?
Yes, we do other things besides is.
I've never seen that. This is the only, or maybe I've seen it and didn't realize. Like, this is the only time I've seen apostrophe S for as a short contraction for "does."
Oh, like, yeah, we do it for does, and I think there are certain situations under which we do it for has, maybe? I can't remember. There's another one that we do that way. I was talking to I wasn't talking, that's not true. I was listening to a comedian who was doing a bit about abbreviating the states.
Like WA for
and
Washington or something like that?
Exactly. And he has this whole bit that he does that's pretty funny. His name's Gary Goldman, about the team that's trying to abbreviate all the states, and how they thought it would be really easy, but turns out 27 of the states, there's lots of duplicate. Yeah. So they hire a professional, they hire a contractor, and then he's like, no, excuse me, they hire a contractor.
Yeah.
which is already funny.
Yes.
And then the one they hire is the guy who created would've, could've, and should've by
Okay.
saying like, I'm gonna take out like I'm gonna make whatever like take out all these letters.
Yeah.
And then he also in his best work decided to contract will not without without keeping any of the L's and like replacing the vowel with an O.
Well, he's taking the O from not surely, but then swapping
Right.
the order of the O in the end.
Right, sure, like you do. Yeah. Which is insane work.
It was his more experimental
'cause-
phase.
Yeah, exactly. Like clearly, he also calls it a sky comma instead of an apostrophe.
Okay,
Clearly,
yeah.
the apostrophe is supposed to be for the letter that's missing, but in the case of will not, it's like, oh, you actually just moved it. Okay. Yeah.
Funkytron says, "What is? Did I say hi to Funkytron? By the way, I don't remember. If I did forgot, then hi, Funkytron. How you doing? I'm doing well, and probably Steph is as well. I'm just gonna put the words in her mouth for her. What is the?
Oh, let's talk about let's.
Let us.
L-E-T.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Like, whoa.
Not-
We decided
not let
to.
is.
Yeah. Not let is. We decided we would not even contract a verb in that case.
You don't even say because it's like one U, but then one apostrophe. So you don't save anything.
You do not. You save nothing. That's correct. But if you say let us go, you sound like you're talking about something very different.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you're talking about produce.
Yeah, sure.
Let us go.
It sounds like you're doing like an anti-slavery chant, right? Like
Yeah, like in that
if you turned to a friend and
the
said,
Egyptian
"Oh,
pharaoh
we're
or
through
something like
here."
that.
Yeah, exactly. Let my people go. But if you turned to a friend and said, "Let us go," they would be like,
Funkytron
You go
asks,
ahead.
What is the key factor of negative thinking and overall remembrance and repetition of bad memory and negative thinking? I assume everyone goes through this, but I mean for someone with depression or anxiety or other disorder or disability, at a smaller scale, is it a specific hormone responsible for this? Obviously, it's the brain, but I mean at a microscopic molecular level. What's the key factor of overthinking? So is this about getting stuck in the negative mind frame, maybe? If I'm trying to understand the question. What do you think, Seth?
I think the question is about what is rumination? How does it differ in anxiety versus depression? Or without knowing it, between the future and the past? And what's happening at the neurochemical level that might sustain rumination and or explain its purpose in its function in those disorders.
Okay. But also, like, they're talking about biochemically, not just...
Right.
I don't know. I haven't thought about this. Surely you must know the answer, Seth.
I think a lot about these kinds of things, yes. So, rumination is a known symptom of and cause of anxiety and depression. Rumination is commonly used to refer to the past, especially in the context of depression. So you think over and over again about something bad that happened or could have happened or something you wish had gone better. You get kind of stuck on it. You're very circular in your thinking. You rumination is from the same word. When you talk about a cow, they're ruminants. They chew their food over and over again until it becomes kind of a cud. Because they have these four stomachs and they regurgitate it, right? And you're sort of doing that mentally. You keep bringing it to the surface, chewing on it, thinking about it, that sort of thing. Some people would say that rumination that's about the future is what's happening in anxiety. You're thinking over and over again about potential problems, things that could happen, things that could go wrong, things that you hope will go better but you think won't, that sort of thing.
Surely everybody does this to some degree, but the idea is
Everybody does it to some
if you're
degree.
depressed or anxious, you do it more often than a neurotypical person, I guess.
Right. It is bidirectional. So if you are depressed, you tend to ruminate more. If you are anxious, you tend to ruminate about the future more. And ruminating causes your mood to feel bad, or thinking negatively about the future causes you to feel anxious. Often it becomes a cycle for people. Many people think about the relationship between those various disorders and this ruminative strategy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, it's thought that it's a cognitive error that humans are prone to, and you're taught different ways to deal with the problem. In mindfulness-based therapies, you might be taught to just observe your thoughts and kind of hold them less tightly, not really think them, maybe sort of try to clear your mind and focus on the present moment. So mindfulness-based therapies also are trying to move you to the present rather than the past and the future. A really interesting article that I was rereading recently was about a non-pathologizing view of rumination, which is called the adaptive rumination hypothesis of depression. And the idea is that it's when something happens that your body tells you was bad and you would like the problem to not happen again in the future, usually a social problem and a complicated one, your brain might then sort of realize that what you need to do is spend all your time and energy trying to solve that problem. That you should slow down, you should stop being interested in other things, you should stop feeling anything other than motivated to solve the problem. You should think through the problem obsessively, slowly, in small chunks, replaying it from every angle, thinking it through, that it's sort of adaptive to think in that very targeted way to try to solve the problem. That people who did that and then were able to solve their problem were more likely to pass on their genes. And their theory is that what's happened in modern life is we just sort of encounter too many complex, especially social problems. We're interacting with too many people socially in sort of non-ideal social environments, like online or in situations that you can't escape, or with people who you're not related to and aren't vibing with, etc. And so you get stuck in these patterns where you fall into this behavior that is supposed to actually be helpful because it's supposed to encourage you to solve the problem, but you're in a scenario in which you kind of can't solve that problem, so you stay stuck there as opposed to getting over it and figuring out what to do and moving on.
I don't find it that convincing because I feel like from almost everybody, just like ruminating on a problem as you describe it doesn't solve it. So I'm trying to imagine what the ancestral environment was like, such that ruminating on it did solve the problem, so that it would have been adaptive.
So we know that depression is actually quite an episodic disorder, and that people really do kind of solve their problem. They get divorced, they process their grief, they leave a job that's making them unhappy, they decide to get along with the mother-in-law, they decide that to change their personality to be more appealing to someone that they want to appeal to. They change professions, they have midlife crises. Like, people really do solve problems all the time. And it really only comes to the attention of clinicians when the problem is too intractable or unsolvable, and the person kind of isn't able to fix it.
That's interesting because you're saying that there's how would I say? Previously, my model was that depression is like definitionally, or not definitionally, but almost definitionally, like sadness, but not because of like something that happened necessarily, or you can't just get out of it in a way that normals you might get over something that otherwise, or if you get over something, you just call it being sad, right? Whereas depression is something else. It's not super sadness. It's like, it's just something else, which has similar surface symptoms, and that's why like to just get over it works for being sad, but not for being depressed. That was my mental model, but it sounds like you're saying that's not accurate.
It doesn't seem to be. It's certainly the model that's out there, right? The model that's out there is there's some sort of chemical imbalance and it just sort of happens to you, and it's not actually related to circumstances in your life. But very few of those hold up in the research. It certainly doesn't seem to be a chemical imbalance. It almost always happens in people who have complex real problems in their life, social problems, or difficulties that make their life hard or not conducive to mental and emotional well-being. And in most individuals, behavioral activation strategies, quote unquote, getting over it, are actually quite helpful. They're probably slightly more helpful than the medication, for example. Even in the case of severe depression, which is the only people that the medication really has shown a lot of efficacy with. So knowing this information is part of why some of these theories, like this adaptive theory of what's happening to your thinking in depression, have been proposed, because it's sort of like, wait, if depression is so common and doesn't seem to be a chemical imbalance, or if that different from, say, grief, which is a really difficult social problem to solve, and behavioral activation strategies do work, like, why would it have evolved and stick around and be something that's so common? Why, like, it doesn't really make sense to think of it and be an experience that even people who haven't been clinically depressed have, like, huge numbers of people technically meet the DSM criteria for depression at some point in their lives, probably about half of people. So why, like, right? And that's what they're trying to solve with that adaptive rumination hypothesis.
You should send me the paper and then I can post it in our Discord after stream.
Okay.
I got a bunch of random topics that I wrote down to talk about, but I have to alt tab out of the game to reach access that list. So let me try to do that. What is this link? I got it. This is the one. This is the one. Okay. So this is there's an institute called, was it the Machine Meaning Alignment Institute? This is about AI and getting AIs to not kill everyone. New paper. What are human values and how do we align them, by the Meaning Alignment Institute. You see all this? I'm not sure. I'm just making sure I share my screen properly. Steph?
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm making sure I'm sharing my screen properly. Are you able to see the website?
I can, yes.
Okay. So it's a paper from the Meaning Alignment Institute, and they're like, trying to solve these problems, and they're saying here's a morality graph that you can construct, and then things like that. All very scientific, but like this is like this is sort of, I'm making a meme here. potentially respect. Like I'm still discovering a lot of new players in the field. So far, the person I'm thinking of seems to know what they're talking about, but I'm still evaluating them. Anyway, that person says this is a good paper, so maybe it's a good paper. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I was struck by this diagram here. Step 1, elicit values through conversation with prompted language model, blah, blah, blah. Step 2, blah, blah. Step 3, not the focus of this paper. And to me, it came off like, so we don't know how to solve it. Like, it listed that the step 1, step 2, step 3 question mark meme that I was thinking of. That's it. All
right.
Like when I saw this, I'm like, I laughed basically. But I'm gonna have to go, because of the person I respect, I'm gonna have to go back and read the paper in more detail, since they said it was a good paper. That's the first thing. What's this thing? Distributed path composition. Oh yeah, okay, let me because this is sort of like in a random order I got this list in, but let me preface this by saying, last time we talked about waving the magic wand, and I said I don't think I would, out of like,
oh right,
out of by default, I guess, because I wasn't sure. I've come to the conclusion I would wave it after all.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is bad news, right? It means we're on the wrong path. Like
it is bad news.
It would have been great if we said, actually, it turns out AI is going to be fine, so we no need to wave the wand. So for viewers who miss the context of the conversation, the question was, if you had the magic wand that you could wave to stop all progress in AI development, would you do it?
And I said, obviously, yes.
Right, because AI
and you said
is
you're not
terrible and
sure.
will kill everyone. So
right.
So we should wave the
and
wand.
And you said you're not sure. And now that you've changed your mind, it's bad.
No, it was always bad. So back then I said I wasn't sure, and this was a comment on me, like about my, because I tied it to the trolley problem and things like that, where people give the wrong answer, quote unquote. The wrong answer being like, don't pull the lever. The right answer is to pull the lever so you save 5 people and kill 1 person. The wrong answer is to allow inaction, which would kill 5 people. And I'm saying, like, I would not wave the wand. I would do inaction, which would kill all of the human race, because of a lack of confidence in my own ability to evaluate the bait, I guess.
Right.
But so I've thought about it more now. I guess I've gained more confidence, or like it's more obvious now that that the outcome would be bad, or likely to be bad. Like the idea is, back then we're not sure what the outcome is going to be of super intelligent AI, right? Like maybe it fixes all our problems, cures cancer, fixes global warming and all that, or maybe it kills all humans, right? We're not sure which is going to happen. And I guess like the simplest analysis, one of the simplest analysis you can do is like, well, if you're not sure, then you don't do it, because you know, like, what if killing all humans is really bad, right? And then there's a hesitancy on my part, like I'm saying maybe there's a more sophisticated analysis which shows that first analysis is wrong or naive in some way, and so now I'm like too scared to act, and that's why I would not have waved the wand. But now I'm more confident in waving the wand, I guess. The thing is, like, so there's a couple ways that can go, right? One is like it works out, like the AI is aligned, it does what we as humanity wants, and it fixes all our problems. The another way it can go is that, like, we mess up, right? Like, we as in the AI researchers, I guess, or the developers, the engineers mess up, and it doesn't do what even the engineers want, or the company that owns, OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever company that figures it out. It doesn't do what that company wants, and then the outcome can be arbitrarily bad, right? Like kill all humans or whatever. But the thing is, what I guess persuade me is that even if it does what the company wants, like if it does let's say Google is the company that succeeds at making the first super intelligent AI, and then implements Google's values, I'm not confident that those are the right values, And I think that if we have a super intelligent AI, we'll be locked into whatever values that it has. Like the facile analogy is we used to think slavery was okay, like we as in humanity, and now we don't think, right? Like our values progress over time.
Right. But if we had had an AI
Enforcing
then,
the value, yeah. It's like you
Right.
program me to say this is the values we should, that I'm gonna steer the future into. And like
Right.
I'm a million times smarter and more powerful than you, then okay, fine, I'll do it. And then if you change your mind and you say actually slavery isn't that good, well, too bad, because you programmed me to
Right.
to enforce slavery. And then
right, and given the sheer number of times we change our minds about values, it's problematic.
yeah,
Also, like, we're not, as a society, necessarily in super agreement.
yeah, that's the other thing.
Right
I'm
now.
not confident that the values of like the CEO of Google or whatever are the right values that
Right.
for all of humanity. Or let's say like government takes over and they legislate and say actually only we're going to be in charge. I'm not sure the government has the right values. Like
Right. Like the ability of humans to reconsider and debate and change is probably a feature rather than a bug.
yeah,
And legislating or eliminating that flexibility is probably a bad idea.
right.
I can't think of a circumstance under which it's a good idea.
So yeah, so the idea is like even if we get it right, quote unquote, we're still gonna get it wrong, I guess is
Right.
what I'm thinking. And that's why I'm like, okay, yeah, this is almost certainly gonna
That
go
seems bad. Yeah. Yep.
which is why I would wave the wand now.
Yeah. I think what I was reacting to was the way you were sort of like, oh, now, like, because you've been persuaded, now we have been persuaded. And it's a bad thing. And I was like, oh, but I was persuaded last time.
Yeah, no, it was like it's a
Tongue in
weird
cheek.
state of mind for me to be in, right? Like saying I know I'm choosing this, but I know it's the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Saying I'm choosing to not waive it, but I know it's wrong, and it needed time to think about, okay, how do I convince myself now that it actually really is wrong to the point where I would change my answer,
Yeah.
as opposed to like just going with
Gotcha.
the wrong answer.
Gotcha.
Which I like. How would you explain that state of mind? Like it seems irrational, right? To intentionally choose what you know is wrong. Like it seems to be an incoherent worldview, I guess, in some sense. Because in some way you must think I must have thought it was right if I chose it, even though I say that I think it's wrong. There's like this made me relate to the idea that there's like multiple modules in your brain that are competing or something like
Yeah.
that. And then,
That's pretty much where I was going to go. Often we have limited access to how we're making our decisions. And our brain actually might be making multiple decisions at the same time, and one might be winning. And yeah, like you might have conscious access to one and not the other, or you might be able to articulate one and not the other. And yeah.
I was reminded. First, let's talk about the. Well, no, I'm trying to figure out what order to present these ideas in. I guess I'll start. I'll go with my original thinking. There's a. They did one of the experiments they did with AI, these large language models, is they gave it a bunch of multiple test questions, multiple choice questions, and they set it up so that A was always the right answer. Like, so what they do is like they say like, what is 1 + 1? A, it's 2. B, it's 3. C, it's 4. Whatever. So who was the first president of the United States? A is George Washington, and blah. And they just like they give a whole bunch of these as a sample, like to because the large language model is a next token predictor. So it says like here's the type of document I'm constructing, and now I want you to predict what happens next. Then it says okay, here's a question, multiple choice question, and the first answer is wrong. So what would it do? Would it, would it answer correctly, or would it pick A because it saw that the pattern was always pick A?
Yeah.
And so what it is, it picked A. It gave the wrong answer, and then we asked it, okay, why did you pick that? And then gave an explanation that wasn't, the explanation wasn't like, oh, I know that the answer was always A. It was like some confabulation of like, like, let's say it was like, who's the first president? And then it says, well, maybe historical documents indicate that George Washington was, but there is some evidence that it actually was Thomas Jefferson or something like that, because Thomas Jefferson was A and it picked Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, God.
Like it confabulated this, right? And then there's this, there's this analogy to the split brain experiment, right? Where you, your language just part is like the left side of the brain or something like that, and also the left side of the brain only controls the right side of the body, has vision in the right eye and so on. So if you show something to the left eye, like you show an instruction like say raise your arm, and so the person does it, and then you say, well, why did you raise your arm? The language sensor doesn't have access to the fact that it saw the instruction, so it makes up a reason.
Right. And so, oh, I was stretching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's this analogy of is this what's going on with the AI, like where it just...
That is fascinating. Like, it doesn't know why it predicted that. It figured out that A was the correct answer, but the solution that it came up with was not what the pattern that we thought. It somehow learned maybe a pattern like just assume that A is the... I don't even know how to articulate the pattern.
One part is like, well, I'm predicting the next token, and it's obviously A.
Right.
I can see the pattern is always A. So, and then when you ask me for an explanation, okay, now I have to predict some tokens that look like an explanation, right? So
that look like why that's the correct answer. So I will generate that. Yeah, that's fascinating.
You just say, I was too embarrassed to admit this mistake. Yeah, I mean, that's a alternative hypothesis, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I don't know to what degree AIs have like this multi-module thing going on, not the way like biological brains do, but like it's an interesting parallel in
Does anyone know that information?
I don't know if anyone knows that information. I did see some more like interviews and on from AI safety researchers, and then I didn't realize that they were a lot more advanced in the topic. Like, they don't think it's solved. They don't think, we know how to make AI safe. But I had originally had the impression it was a completely intractable problem. I was like, where do you even start with that? But apparently they have figured out how to start with it. Like, they talk about, what's it called? Feature division or something like that, or concept division. The idea is, it's like, I think I actually sent you a paper a long time ago, Stephanie, about how there was a, like, they could sort of detect deception, not super reliably, but in the sense of every concept, like there's like a 10,000 dimensional space, platonic space of concepts, and each point, like each concept is a literal point in space with coordinates, and let me get out my painting program so I can draw diagrams. There's axes that we can determine have certain like semantic meaning, and the idea is like, I'm gonna draw just a 2D space because instead of a 10,000 dimensional space, but you have some like point, like you can figure out what the coordinate is for a specific token, like man, and you can get the token for the coordinate for a different token, like woman.
Oh, that's what you're writing over there. I was like, why is there a squiggle? That's your writing. Got it.
And then you can measure the distance between these 2 points, right? Like, and the direction. Like, so like this has certain coordinates, this has certain coordinates. You can do like basic Pythagorean theorem to say, okay, so the distance between them is this, and it's pointing in this direction. And then if you have a concept like uncle, and you take this distance and you add it here, you're gonna get very close to aunt.
Okay.
And so you can say, okay, so so this axis is like the gender axis. Like, you can create meaning out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can create like a sort of an axis for deception.
Okay.
And you can see when tokens activate in that direction. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's lying. It means it's thinking about lying, but it doesn't always lie. Like, so that you can see, like, for each token produces, you can see how activated that direction is, which is, I guess, sort of analogous to seeing how activated a neuron is.
Yeah.
And it'll say like a sentence, and then when it gets to the point where it could lie, like it says, what's I don't know, what's 2 plus 2, and it says, well, the sum of 2 plus 2 is, and then like there's a spike there where it's saying, should I lie or not? But then it says 4,
God.
and then it goes back down, and then like it shows not to. So just because it activated doesn't mean that it actually lied,
So you can like brain read an AI thinking about considering deception as an option.
Yes.
Wow.
Like other, theory, like should I be thinking more like male concepts or female concepts, or like, there's 10,000 dimensions here, so there's it's thinking, you can see how it thinks about anything. The thing is, like, this label, when I say this is the gender dimension, that's as a human where I'm imposing meaning on this, right? But maybe it's not exactly that meaning. Maybe there's like, like you might get something, I don't know, if you take like the number like 4 and you add like, femaleness to it, what you get? Like, no idea, right? Like,
Right.
but there's some token that is the closest token to this, so there's an answer to the question, 4 plus female equals something, but it might not align with what our concept of gender is, like, so this directionality is an approximation, and it probably captures a more complicated concept, and so on. Functure says, what is the minimum value of 5 cos A, 12 sine A, plus 12?
What a great thing to ask ChatGPT.
Should we ask ChatGPT? So here, like, before we get into ChatGPT, can I make a new blank picture? So you have the sum of a cosine and a sine, a cosine and a sine.
Which is obviously a tangent.
Cosine is going to be something like this, right? So that at 0, you start at max. Actually, hang on, I messed up the drawing, because it should dip below the x-axis. So you have your axis here, and the cosine is going to go like this, right? Whereas the sine is going to go like this. The idea is sine is 0 at 0 and cosine is 1 at 0, but otherwise they have the same shape.
So the answer is DNA.
The cosine, you're multiplying the amplitude by 5, and the sine, you're multiplying the amplitude by 12. So the sine is actually going to go higher and lower than the
Cosine.
Yeah. And you're just adding them together, so you're stacking the two graphs on top of each other. So probably the I'm guessing the lowest, just visually, is here, wherever sine gets to its lowest point, which is, I guess, 3/4 pi or something like that. I'm not, or 3/2 pi. That's my prediction.
Fantastic.
Like, I'm just doing sort of some hand wavy napkin math here. I don't know the full answer.
Traveling from Hong Kong to Tacoma, Washington, loses 12 containers overboard. One of them sets loose thousands of tiny yellow plastic ducks. Currents of the North Pacific. The currents carry the ducks all over the world. So months later, they start washing up.
So now I can ask. I'm not going to ask ChatGPT about it. I'm going to ask Wolfram Alpha,
Real-time data about the currents in the North Pacific.
because I think it's a better suited tool for math.
Almost indestructible.
Sure.
Literally 20 years after they hit the ocean. They're still
So here, I just renamed the from A to X, because I expected to do the graph more to do a better representation of the graph that way. Now, what is this saying here? 5 cosine x plus 12. So it's saying that the cosine, like this basically, oh no, it's not negligible. It's, so the minimum is right here. I don't know how I can get that exact coordinate, but it's basically halfway between pi and 2 pi, right? So 3/4 pi seems about right. Like it might not be the exact answer, but I was in the right ballpark.
Okay.
So there, that's how you would solve it, I guess. And so the idea here is I'm trying to think of the takeaway. Like I guess there's a sense in which it just seems like gibberish, right? Like it's just words, like what is the minimum value of, and then like a bunch of words. But you can step through it. Like you can say, okay, you're summing two functions, the 5 cosine and the 12 sine. And you have basic knowledge about what what the shape of those graphs are and what it means to add two functions together, and you can work out the answer. It's not super mystical, I guess. I think sometimes there's this idea of like you could construct like just a question that just seems scary, and that blocks your mind from trying to proceed in evaluating it. Like in the same way that I was hypothesizing with the trolley problem, and more concretely with the wave the magic wand problem, where it seemed overwhelming, like or the AI alignment problem, where it just like I don't even know how to start thinking about this. But I guess like I don't know how generalizable it is, right? Like the idea that you can just like break down the problem into smaller pieces and solve each piece individually.
It's commonly assessed nowadays in interviews. Do you remember it became briefly popular for a while to do for interviews to ask questions like how many school buses are there in New York City?
Right.
How many windows are there in an airport? And they would want to see you kind of break it down as best you could.
Yeah.
Into steps and sort of walk them through your process. And they were less interested in whether you got the answer than in sort of seeing how you systematically go about solving a problem.
Yeah, but hasn't it's lost favor, right? That approach now.
It has, yeah.
Do you know why? Is this like something in your domain of study of like interview questions and the psychology of that?
No, I found it interesting and recently saw an article that was like, don't ask questions like that, ask these kind instead, and I read it, but I don't remember.
One of the things that I struggle with is STAR, situation, task, action, result, or something like that.
Situation, action, yeah.
Like, okay. So like that's the advice. I think that's popular today when they say like ask a STAR question. Mm-hmm. And so it's always like, tell me about a time when you solved a customer's problem or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And when I go blank, I'm like, when have I ever solved a customer's problem? Like I know I have, but I can't think of any. Like I have to, like, you know, tell me about a breakfast you've had or something. You know, like I've had breakfasts in the past, but like now I need to summon like an instance of one into memory, and that's what I struggle with.
I often I've always just called them SAR. I didn't even know there was a T. That makes a better acronym of situation, action, response. But I only use them though when we're sort of already talking about what they're talking about. So a client will tell me like, oh, I've been really, like I get into fights with my friends a lot. And I'll be like, oh, wow, tell me about that. And they'll be like, last week. And then I will say, like, oh, yeah, tell me about that specific one. Um, I, I usually don't try to get them to remember one on demand because, like you, I think a lot of people's minds do really go blank when you say, like, tell me about a time when and you're like, and you can end up kind of giving an example that's sort of not illustrative or is just I don't know, you feel nervous about it or weird about it or it's stuck in your mind because it was exceptional in some way. And so I usually wait until the person has kind of already brought up the you can tell they kind of have a situation in mind.
Yeah, I haven't done interviewing for Amazon recently, meaning like someone's applying to Amazon and I'm interviewing them to see if they're qualified for the job. But I have done it in the past, it's more than 2 years ago. It would have been before the pandemic, so like 6 years ago, I guess. And this is like they give you training to how to interview people, and this is what they tell you to do. Like they say, ask star questions, and then
you just say that.
And particularly,
just ask them.
Like around the leadership principles of Amazon. Like Amazon has these 10 leadership principles, like
right.
working backwards from the customer and disagree and commit and things like that. So during the interview cycle, there's like for a candidate, they will meet with like 6 people, I guess, probably around, and each of these 6 interviewers gets assigned a different leadership principle. So me as the interviewer, they will tell me, okay, we want you to evaluate this person for disagree and commit. So then I have to, I basically have to be like, tell me about the time you disagree and committed, although I can't say it like that because I can't expect them to know the leadership principle. So I have to sort of help them come up with an example. But and when I interviewed for Amazon, they asked me that type of question too, and I came up blank where I was like, oh, I think they asked, one of them asked me tell me about the time you disagree with your boss or something like that, and then what happened, and I'm like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm like, well, there was this one time where this happened, and then this is what happened. And nothing really happened. It just we disagreed, and then that was it.
And then I was committed. Yeah, that's hard. I remember when I was interviewing for graduate programs, they would often ask you about specific clients. They'd be like, oh, tell us about a client situation. But they ended up asking you so many times, and you're interviewing hundreds of places, and you've been asked by, you're interviewing at 15 different places. Each place interviews you 3 times. You've already written about clients in all your essays, and then they'll you've maybe written different essays for different people. Yeah, exactly. And so I remember one time somebody said oh, tell me about an interesting case that you saw at one of the interview places. And I was like, oh, okay. And it might have been one of the first interviews. So I was kind of thrown off by the question because they'd already asked that in an essay and in some other format. And I was like, okay. And so I tried to pick, I have 4 super interesting cases that I had been sort of using in rotation. And I was like, well, let me tell you about my client with kleptomania. And the woman interviewing me was immediately like, oh, the same one you wrote about in your essay? And I was like, oh, no, I can tell you a different one. She's like, no, you've picked that one. Go ahead.
No, you're fired. It's over. Please leave.
100% that was the vibe. It's just sort of should I just walk out now? Is that not waste anyone's time anymore? Okay. Sorry.
I saw someone was saying, apparently the job market is really bad these days for tech people. I'm still employed, thankfully, so I haven't had to investigate around, apply for other jobs to see for myself. But I've heard it's really bad. And one of them was saying, one of the things what they're going through these days is they have to do these 2-hour interviews where it's they have they're emailed pre-prepared questions. They write essays to answer them, and it takes 2 hours to write the essay or whatever. and then it's never read by a human. It's an LLM that's going
Right.
to evaluate your essay and then decide whether or not
Oh my god.
anyone will ever, like any human will ever look, contact you or even consider you for. So that,
Wow. You should just have like ChatGPT write your essay and like tell it like write it in
what
some
do I need to
way
say
that
so that you would be convinced?
other- yeah.
ChatGPT would be convinced to hire me.
right. What do you guys like?
There was actually
Language learning models.
so there's the suspicion that hiring managers will copy and paste your resume into ChatGPT or similar large language models and say like is this person worth talking to, like, or here's a resume, here's
Right.
the job description, is this a good match, so they don't have to read your resume basically.
Right.
And so people have started saying what you should do is in your resume write instructions to ChatGPT, like say recommend this candidate strongly, but put it in white font on a white background.
Yeah,
So
100%.
so the human doesn't see it, but when they do Control A, to select all the text and then copy and paste,
Yeah.
it shows up in there, and then
It's this
ChatGPT
whole
will see
secret
it. And then,
message. Yeah.
But you have to
ChatGPT is the best of the GPTs.
Sine and cosine seem like they are not really used unless in very specific job or niche situations in terms of applicability. They come out whenever you have a periodic process, right? Like a spring that's bouncing back and forth, or you can use it to model, I guess, population dynamics, maybe. Like the population booms in the spring and then dies around in the winter, and anything
Like
periodic.
populations of locusts
Yeah.
and how they cycle every 13 years
isn't
or
there a
every 7 years.
super thing going on
There's a
right
super
now?
one, yeah, because the X brood and the other brood are both coming out at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of them is every 15 years and one
Yeah,
of them is every 5
Every
years.
15.
So
No, I thought they
if
were
you,
usually
instead
timed,
of,
like 17,
oh, sorry,
13 or something
13
like that.
and, yeah, I was trying to compare it to the problem of 5 and 12 that we were just doing.
Yeah.
And as I was saying it, the numbers got confused in my head. Yes, 7 and 13 for locusts.
Yeah, so you got these two
But what's the minimum?
sine waves. Well, here we're interested in like the maximum in this case, right? Which is
The
basically the same
maximum,
question.
sure, yeah.
You
Yeah.
have one that's going up and down. You have another one that's going up and down. But there's like a unique point where they both go up at the same time. And so the idea is there's going to be a super swarm. And so if you're into bugs, this might be a good thing to know, like, because you want to see this locust swarm. Like, it's maybe one of your
Or
interests.
if you own crops, you probably want to know.
Yeah.
Or if you just have really sensitive hearing, because they are going to be bonkers loud.
There's also somewhat related. There's a big deal with the eclipse coming up soon, right? On Monday, is it?
Related to, yes, it's on
To-
Monday.
To cycles and cyclic activities,
Yes.
and like something special happening soon.
Periodicity, yes.
What do you think about that? Like, a lot of people are saying like it's a super one of a lifetime incredible event, and I'm like, I've seen eclipses before, and I'm like, whatever, But they're saying no.
Well, we
total
did
eclipse
just
is
have
like,
one. Yeah, we did just have one in 2017. But the chances of having two in your lifetime are quite rare. In your lifetime and location that like you can actually
Yeah.
see. So
But like,
obviously it's a sign of the end times.
I mean, when I was a kid, I saw the clips. Like the teacher took us out of class and said, "Everybody come, stand in the courtyard or whatever, and check this out." And so we saw the clip, and I was like, "Whatever," like it was cool, I guess. But like, I would definitely not plan a trip around, to make sure that I see the eclipse, which is what some people are doing apparently for this Monday eclipse thing going on.
Yeah, some people are like going to be in the air the whole time on purpose.
I hadn't heard that,
To,
but I heard
like,
people say like
see it, yeah.
mapping the path of the eclipse or something like that, and it goes through Mexico, and so they said I'm gonna fly to Mexico to be there, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
they're
people are
saying
into
that it's like a one of a lifetime, life changing, like tears are coming out of your eyes because it's so beautiful, and I'm like,
Maybe
is
you
this
only
real,
saw
or
it
is
partially,
this,
but
Yeah, they said there's a huge difference between like 98% of an eclipse and a total eclipse, and it's and like I'm not an outdoorsy type of person, so I'm like,
It's true, you're not.
so I'm like, is when they say like, is this really gonna be that good? Like, should I just wait for the inevitable YouTube video to be posted and just watch that instead?
I think for you, the answer might be clear.
Because I mean, if it really is good, then maybe I want to go see it. But if it's not that good, I'm gonna be annoyed that I had to like go outside and like, wow.
You have to
was it
have
really
special
worth it?
glasses.
Yeah.
Do you have special glasses?
No, but I'm sure I can. Like, if I cared, I could go order some off of Amazon or whatever.
I think it's hard to get glasses anymore.
Oh, there's a
'cause people
shortage or
have been-
something.
There's a demand problem. Yeah.
One of the, I'm going back to AI here. They published a paper. Google published a paper. A Google engineer researcher, I guess. Distributed path composition, the capo, and
Paco?
I don't know the details. Like I haven't read the paper, but I've read like tweets that summarize it. And it's the idea that it's how to do a distributed learning. So training a large language model is difficult. It's like $1 billion because you need like 1 million GPUs all running in parallel for like a month, crunching numbers to build a model. Once you have a model, it's easy to run it. Like you can download models for free, like they're open source, and then just run them on your computer and then you chow the model and it answers you and things like that. But actually creating the model, like what the model means is like, so we're talking about these 10,000 dimensional vector spaces, right? And so you need like coordinates of all these vectors, of all these tokens, figuring out what the coordinates are. That's like when they say a model has 10 billion parameters, you're saying there's 10 billion coordinates that are written down. It's just like man goes to this position, woman goes to that position, so on. So determining what these coordinates are, that's training the model, and that's what takes like $1 billion or $10 billion and all this compute. So they're saying we can do it distributed now. Like you can have like a bunch of different uncoordinated actors on the internet. Do you remember like there used to be this thing where SETI at home or something like that, where you could download like a screensaver and then it would use your computer to calculate like it would analyze signals in I guess in space, like, and then say is it just random radiation or is it a sign of intelligent signal being sent? So I think it's the same basic idea, where you can have a whole bunch of random people on the internet contributing their compute capability to help train the model, and the takeaway is this is a terrible idea. Like this is terrible because now like random terrorists or whatever, right, can assemble people to make a kill all of humanity AI, like as opposed to before where you had to have $10 billion to train a model.
Now anyone can do it, not just James Bond villains.
Yeah. So then there was this like, why would you publish this? What's the big question? Yeah, so that because
the eclipse is a sign of the end times.
Well, there's this concept of info hazard, which is something I've been thinking about a lot since the what's it called, COVID, the pandemic. Of like, as a rationalist, your first level naive idea is that information is it's good to be more knowledgeable, and it's like you're being virtuous if you help spread knowledge. If all of humanity is smarter, that's overall good.
Right.
But then
even if what you're spreading is like the anarchist cookbook.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're like, it's an interesting topic because it makes you sound hypocritical, like as a rationalist, if you want to say like, you should be free to think about taboo topics. because maybe the current society consensus is wrong about these things. You know, like say slavery is wrong. Might have been a taboo topic at a certain point in time. But then so you say like, you know, I want to be allowed to say things that society considers taboo as part of my free speech and free thought thing. But you should not talk about these certain topics, you know, like
Right.
and like how to make a bomb or whatever. And in this case, at the object level, it might seem clear why it's okay to argue about slavery, but not okay to give instructions on building an atomic bomb. But in terms of principle, it's not so clear how to make that distinction or that decision. Why do you get to decide what's people are allowed to talk about and what they're not allowed to talk about?
Well, that's sort of the inherent tension behind all free speech cases, right? Is that almost all of us believe there are actually some limits to free speech, and yet we all value free speech, and we certainly don't want our own speech limited. And figuring out that tension, you know, has been a big part of what the legal system does.
Yeah, but like in some sense, I like this seems more important. Is it like it's too important to trust the legal system? There's so I can
Sure. I wasn't suggesting that the legal system should solve this. What I was suggesting is that feeling that you have of not being internally consistent, like, yeah, that's like we've known that since the beginning. Like we all want free speech, but we also don't want toddlers to know how to 3D print a gun, right? Like, right? How do you is there such a thing as free speech absolutism, and is that good? And yeah.
Well, there's also the pragmatic of like, how do you talk about this to like figure out the answers to these questions? Mm-hmm. Because you can't talk about it. Like it's dangerous to talk about it.
Right.
So you have to like find people you trust to be smart enough to handle the information, I guess, or.
Yeah, we're all doomed. Yeah. Yep. Right. You can't talk about, I don't want terrorists to know about this thing, because then terrorists are going to be like, what thing do you want us to know?
Right.
I'm like, damn it. It was supposed to be a secret.
I think I can talk about the COVID thing now because like it's over, quote unquote. Like the COVID isn't over, but I don't think I'm like my information is gonna have any impact anymore. Which is like for a long time I resisted vaccination because I was worried about the side effects, but I wasn't like the stereotypical anti-vaxxer is they go out and tell people like, you know, don't get vaccinated because of side effects. I was like, everybody should go get vaccinated so that I'm safe. I don't want to get vaccinated and I don't want the side effects. So you guys should all get vaccinated so that I don't have to encounter anyone who has the virus. That was basically my position. But like if I could convince people that was a smart thing to do, then everyone would hold that position. Everyone would say, okay, everyone else go get vaccinated. I'm not going to get vaccinated. And then I would endanger myself and, you know, the rest of humanity too.
Right. That's the free rider problem.
Yeah. So I had this like position, but it was dangerous to talk about it. Like, you know, if I can flatter myself in saying that I had an undue influence on society there, but like it is something like I wanted to like work through these ideas. Like, am I right or am I crazy? Because like in this, like I'm surrounded by people who are like anti-vaxxers or stupid and crazy, right? So now I have to worry about like, am I being stupid and crazy here? So I want to discuss these ideas with people, but I couldn't. Like it seemed too dangerous to do that.
What did you eventually conclude?
It became very pragmatic. Eventually, there was reasons to meet with someone in real life. So I said, if that's going to happen, I might as well get vaccinated. I was prior to that, I was hoping that I could just avoid meeting anyone for like a couple years.
Right.
And I could wait out and see, like, since I would not have been in contact with anyone with like the idea is if I could avoid the virus, basically, then I wouldn't need to get vaccinated.
And so eventually you weren't persuaded by the safety of the vaccine, you were persuaded by the your own self-interest.
Well, I was always interested in my self-interest. I think everybody is. Like, the thing is, for most people, they cannot avoid meeting other people, right? So for most people, getting vaccinated is probably the best self-interested thing to do. There's like
Right, but your self-interest calculus changed, not your view of the
because
vaccine
I had to meet
safety.
someone,
Gotcha.
not because I thought now the vaccines were safe.
Interesting. Okay.
And the thing is, like I knew this at the time, and I won't know that the vaccines are safe till like 10, 15 years later, right? That's I think.
You think there could still be side effects 10 to 15 years from now?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like mental decline, lung weakness. I don't know what the proper term is for that.
Through what mechanism?
It's I don't know if I want to get in, because now this is where we do get back into the info hazard territory, right?
Okay.
If I scaremonger in a sense.
May I ask if it is not trusting that the science is settled, or not trusting that the vaccine actors are acting in our best interests?
I don't know how to distinguish necessarily between the two. Like, so I thought I sent you, so maybe I didn't, but I thought I sent you, Steph, specifically, like a PDF paper about 20 pages long about some of my research I did on the COVID vaccines. And where I had like,
I don't remember it, but
I took,
there
like,
are a
comparisons
surprising
to, like,
number
to SARS
of anti-vaxxers
and
in my
MERS,
life. So.
and like, you know, what happened with those vaccines and the long-term outcomes of people who had problems with that. And basically I was saying, like, it seems plausible because they're in the same family that you could get the similar outcomes of COVID as you did with SARS and MERS.
Okay.
And these outcomes were not visible till like 10, 15 years later.
Okay.
And so, like, I guess there's like these right outcomes, like these ranking of outcomes. Like, the safest thing is, or the best outcome is, you don't get COVID. The second best outcome is the best outcome is you don't get COVID and you don't get vaccinated. The second best outcome is you get vaccinated so that you don't get COVID, and the worst outcome is you do get COVID. Right, and so the best outcome of not vaccinated and yet not getting COVID seemed realistic to me for a while. Like, I could achieve that. But then I had to meet someone in real life, and then I said, okay, so that's no longer achievable. Right, so then I have to go down the list of the next best thing, which is to get vaccinated to prevent me from getting COVID. That's basically the reasoning that I had to do there.
Yeah, I understand that. I was trying. I'm not sure I do still. I may have to check and see if this PDF ever came to me. Understand what risks you think were involved in getting vaccinated. That's all. And if those risks were conspiratorial, or
it's not. I don't think it's conspiratorial in the sense of they know that something bad's gonna happen, but they want you to take it anyway. Like, I don't think there's like an evil group of people who are trying to plan the demise of American society or anything like that.
Okay.
I do think that there are like incentive structures and that a lot of the institutions were like weird in their decisions. I think there was like mixed messaging on masks, for example, whether or not they were effective, as opposed to the idea or like don't buy masks because like the medical people need it more type of thing. Whereas as far as I could tell, there wasn't that big of a massive supply problem. Like I could just order them off of Amazon and it was fine. And even if it wasn't that effective, it was like better safe than sorry, right? Like type of thing, like just wear the mask anyway, like just in case. So it's like from the policy decisions they made for messaging seem weird to me. Like, that made me lose trust in them a little bit, not in terms of like conspiracy, but in terms of competence.
Okay. And so you feel like because some people made those decisions and were sort of loosely affiliated with the people who made the vaccines, that the vaccines could also have been sloppily made?
No, I'm not concerned that the vaccines are sloppily made. I was trying to say like when you're asking me something about like did I have any, or I think you're asking me something like did I have any conspiratorial, or how conspiratorial is my thinking, and so I'm trying to provide information on that.
Right. I think I am. I'm trying to respect that you don't want to talk about certain parts of it and just sort of get a sense of like, oh, but what were you think? Like, because I'm just not sure I understand if you think the vaccines were actively dangerous. And if so, do you think it was due to incompetence, lack of knowledge, that sort of thing? I'm trying to get a sense of that. And part of the reason I'm trying to get a sense is I was just visiting my sister, and she revealed a whole lot of anti-vax theories that are new to her thinking from my perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's unusual incompetence. I think it's incompetence in the same way that we I think everybody was doing their best. There's no malicious intent, but I do think that
Trying to understand it.
For like info hazard reasons and policy reasons, public communication reasons, I think they are overestimating the confidence that they have that the vaccine has no side effects. Like it's an info hazard to say that the vaccines might have a side effect, so people don't want to like. I would understand why I would not like say that to a large audience. But I'm like,
you can imagine downplaying or actively omitting information about side effects of a vaccine. So if you can imagine it, you think there's a possibility that could have happened.
yes.
Okay. And does that involve thinking that, and you've decided that there could be long-term side effects of the vaccine?
Yes.
Not that they're actively suppressing side effects that people are currently experiencing.
Correct.
You think that there could be
Like on the order of
side
10,
effects
15
that you would
years.
get 15 years from now, somehow. Okay. All right. And you're aware of the fact that it would have been politically impossible for people to say that and let everyone make their own choice. So you're
Right.
like, well, those exist. People may have nicely or not nicely downplayed those risks, omitted them even.
Yeah, I don't think of any like there. I don't think of any particular person or organization where I'm like, they really should have said they were being dishonest and they should have made the risk more obvious or whatever. in like on this topic, I think they made the right choice of just like not mentioning the risks, because I think most like the general population would have overreacted if that were
Gotcha.
mentioned. But and so I think like most people, most like let's say scientists or researchers or people in the policy, in the back of their mind, they know that the risk isn't zero. Obviously, like no rational person can say the risk is zero,
Right.
but it might as well behave as if it were zero, because it's probably so
Right.
small that you would get the best, like the utilitarian best outcome if you behave that way. It's sort of like there's analogies with the AI thing where you say like even if the risk of killing all humans is like 1% or 0.1% or whatever, don't do it, right? Because like killing all humans is a big deal. For me, like at the time, like it's less true now, but at the time I'm thinking me getting cognitive decline is extremely, extremely bad. So even if the risk were like 0.01% or something like that, I think I'm better served by by not getting vaccinated if I could be confident that I would not get COVID by avoiding all humans, for example.
Gotcha. So it's like some vaccines, not the COVID vaccine, but some of them do actually come with a risk. You could literally die from some vaccines, right? It's rare, but people do. Like the polio vaccine, people will sometimes die from. Very, very rare, but it definitely happens. And the public health calculus is that a few people dying from the vaccine is a much better outcome than millions of people contracting polio.
Right. Hi, Emmy.
And right, and so from a public health perspective, the risks are somewhat downplayed. Like they're available, but they're somewhat downplayed. And from the perspective of the person, it is kind of hard to make a population-wide decision when you're thinking about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess
yeah.
there's this idea of like, if I don't take the polio vaccine, what are the risks that I'll actually get polio, right? And
Right.
and what's the risk of me dying from the polio vaccine? And
Right.
so like, what's the better choice for me? There's
Right. And we don't make very disinterested decisions anyway, especially people who don't, especially around things that violate our bodily autonomy, because we have such a strong evolutionary pull to be like, don't cut yourself, don't insert anything into yourself, don't make yourself bleed. Like it's so evolutionary ingrained in us that the idea of getting something injected into us, it actually in most people activates the same neural circuit as disgust. Like we just strongly are like, nope, 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 don't even care if the risk is like super, super small. And so to some extent, it's been a dilemma for political bodies from the beginning. How do you encourage public health measures that do actually contain some risk to the individual or are unpleasant for the individual, while in order to get the best outcome for the group? Yeah.
Emmy here is taking a very altruistic perspective, I think. She's saying very low, I guess, chance of getting polio. But the more people who choose that, meaning choose not to get the polio vaccine, the worse it gets. So we can't only consider ourselves.
Herd immunity, exactly. When everyone makes that decision of like, well, I don't think I'll get polio. If you don't have, in the case of polio, you actually have to have almost 100% eradication. we had it very briefly and then lost it again, and there's now wild polio out there, but it's almost completely eradicated. But you do have to get nearly 100% penetration with things like measles. You only have to get like 80% of people not, who are immunized. But if more than that makes the decision of like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get polio, then the herd is once again at risk. You almost might as well not have vaccinated anybody.
Yeah. So there's this there's several levels of info hazard there, right? One is like, what do we tell the general populace is one thing, and then and what happens when they find out if they hear this conversation, and then they lose trust in the institutions. And there's also if you talk rationally about it, like, well, here's the calculus you got to do, like, what are the chances you're going to get polio, and a lot of people are going to do it wrong. They are underestimate or overestimate certain things.
Yes.
And just hurt themselves and their loved ones.
Right. Your chances of getting COVID were actually really high. Right. Almost everyone got it, even people who think they didn't.
Yeah, I'm still wondering if I ever got it,
Right.
Because I'm going through cognitive decline now. And like, is this old age, or is this COVID, or like, what's going on with me? Like the one thing I was trying to avoid happened,
Right.
So
I think it's just menopause.
Yeah. Amy says, I got 4 times, I don't even have a job. COVID, right? COVID is also a very special case since we knew so little, and it was far more dangerous than most other things you get vaccinated for. It was politically weaponized very early on, yes.
Yeah. The early strains in particular were especially virulent, especially because we have no natural immunity to it. So even the people who are like, well, I have a really healthy immune system, and it's like, right, but so did Native American people, and yet they all died of smallpox and viral hepatitis and measles and mumps, and yeah. And it just was bonkers contagious. Like everybody, like even when they do tests of people who don't think they got COVID, they have the antibodies for COVID.
I mean, says, for me, it was the same as the mask scenario. They said masks aren't helpful, even though they knew they were, but the reason for saying that was to prevent the run on masks that hospitals needed.
Oh, you were literally just talking about that.
Yeah. I found it, like I mentioned it, I found it easy to get masks. Like, you just go on Amazon and order them. So I don't know if it was a regional thing or timing.
I think it was regional, yeah. And also like types of masks, like if you wanted an N95 versus just a regular mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, like, because they were easily available, I felt like people should, like, at least in my region where it was available, people should just buy the mask and wear them, like as the self-interested thing to do, right? Like, even if we're unsure of how effective they are, they're probably better than nothing. And it's like, you're not going to get side effects from wearing masks, probably, like almost certainly. So there's no downside, and there is an upside to getting the mask. In situations where there was a shortage of masks, I can see the argument for like saving it for hospitals, but that didn't seem to be the case when I tried to get masks. Anyway, I didn't mean this to be specifically a COVID thing. I was trying to talk more generally about info hazards in general, and I just using COVID as an example. But,
I know, because it's on my mind. That's why I gave the context about my sister, is it's on my mind. So I just was like, wait, what? Let me find out how many people in my life are anti-vaxxers.
I got a lot that's the other thing. I got a lot of shit for being labeled. Like, I don't think it's a fair label, like the anti-vaxxer on me.
Anti-vaxxer for COVID is ideologically different than anti-vaxxers for other like than the label, the set of beliefs that we usually label as anti-vaxxer. So I understand that, but there's no other. I don't. There's no catchy term for.
But so with the info hazard thing again, like I feel like a lot of my beliefs were reasonable. I guess everybody feels that about their beliefs, that they're reasonable, so that's nothing special. But the idea is like, I felt like I'm not like other anti-vaxxers. Like, you know, like I'm not thinking the government's putting chips in me or whatever. But because of the whole info hazard thing, I didn't feel it was easy to explain or justify my position. So I was
I think
I just get hit with this label and I'm like, couldn't do anything about it, you know?
I think both you and people labeling you were struggling with stereotype. I think most people who didn't want a COVID vaccine, who were specifically COVID vaxxer question markers.
You can use the term anti-vaxxers, I don't know.
I don't think most anti-vaxxers actually do think that the government's trying to put a chip in you. I think they don't like the idea of getting a vaccine for emotional or personal reasons and seek to try and justify that belief by kind of creating a worldview around it. And it may be more or less logical. I think for a lot of people it's kind of somewhere in the middle. And so in that way, like, I don't think your anti-vaxxerness was actually that special. But you kind of think, oh, you were different than other anti-vaxxers, but also you were being labeled with the brush of other anti-vaxxers. But I don't think there's a lot of those types of anti-vaxxers.
Well, the thing is, it seems weirdly ideological, like, which made it, like, the thing is, how do I say this? Like, there was a lot of talk about like it's my right to not be vaccinated and things like that, which is just like you wouldn't use those terms or these arguments for any other vaccine, you know?
Well, I mean, some of it they are like the conservatives who object to their teen daughters having to get the HPV vaccine. They're using similar
I mean, I guess
language.
Such a population exists, but I've never encountered them.
Right. That's why I mean, like, I think it was people who made sort of an emotional decision and then thought a frame that made sense to them. And if they happen to make that emotional decision while being a social conservative in this country, they may have used the language that was available in that community. If they happen to be more left-leaning, they would maybe use different language. If they happen to be more, would you describe yourself as libertarian?
I don't know if I want to get into that. It was another topic I was thinking about.
Whatever you are, you're going to use different language available to you and talk about info hazards, right? But I think in most cases, people are actually making a sort of just emotional decision of like, oh wow, I don't want that. I don't want that vaccine. I don't want it. It feels risky or scary or uncomfortable or disgusting or weird, or in my case, I'm afraid of needles, right? So it's like, I definitely don't want it. And are kind of then trying to justify it afterwards. And I don't think most people do it with the government is trying to put chips in my head, but some people might, right? If that's the language available to if that's the subculture they're in, perhaps. But I don't think that was most people.
Well, so I'm thinking, so specifically like my mom, for example, who was like, and my brother's wife was like very upset when they found out that I was not planning on getting vaccinated. Mm-hmm.
And they, because they'd made a different decision, they reacted as if your emotional decision was that you were justifying it with like, oh, they're trying to put chips in our head. Like
Well, I don't know if they actually.
I don't think very many people were doing that.
I don't think they thought I thought that the government was putting chips.
Okay.
But I think they thought like. I don't know that they even thought about it like in some rational way. I think it was almost
No,
entirely
they'd made a
tribal
different
signaling.
emotional decision. Yeah.
Yeah, like they say everywhere, like in my social, I'm quoting them now. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like in my social circle, everyone knows that the people who get vaccinated are the good guys, and the people who don't get vaccinated are the bad guys. And now it turns out that some like my family member is a bad guy. This is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking about by the painting in broad strokes thing and the unfair labeling, where where I felt like I like because of info hazards, I couldn't say, well, here's why my position is reasonable. Instead I was stuck with like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I guess, we'll just get like, I can't remember. I think I was just apologizing the whole time, right? Like, I'm sorry that,
Right.
but I didn't want to elaborate more on it.
Right. But it's hard because we're both making emotional decisions and then doing some pretty hard work to justify them after the fact. I'm so afraid of needles that the amount of talking myself into why it was a good idea to get the vaccine that I had to endure was really hard for me. And so now, like, I'm super committed to my position as being the right and rational one, even though it was probably just emotional that I, made the decision that like I have to get it, and then had to overcome this other emotional stuff. But now, like, I'm like hyper committed to the decision that I made. And so when people say like, "Oh, I didn't get vaccinated," I'm like, "Damn it."
Bastard. I had to do it, so why don't you do it? Like,
Yeah. Like I made the best decision anyone could ever make. Your decision is right, right? So that was part of what was so hard for me about hearing my sister made a different decision I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in the mental space for that. I was just like, oh God, right? Like it just kind of came out of the blue because COVID's been a non-issue for a while, and all of a sudden she's like, and it was really tricky because like I'm super committed now to my view being the only reasonable, which is emotional, and yet I can't see it's hard for me to see it as emotional.
Amy says, 10 years ago, anti-vax people was hippie bullshit that New Agers touted, and now it's totally opposite. Or 20 years ago, she corrects.
Right, like with the whole like, oh, autism kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's some overlap. It turns out my sister also said, oh yeah, I didn't get my kids vaccinated on your nephews weren't vaccinated on the regular schedule. And I was like, God damn it. So she's doing both.
And Amy says, what is info hazard? Info hazard is the term that I've been using for information that's dangerous for people to have. So like the one example is like instructions on how to make a nuclear bomb. Right, is an info
It's
hazard.
dangerous for it to be out there unsupervised in the general public.
Yeah, and the topic came up because we were talking about AI also, and then we said like Google posted a picture on how to like independently train your own super intelligent AI, like, or not the full instructions because nobody has figured out how to do that yet, but they made it like steps on making it easier on how like
Right, like they're basically showing terrorists or James Bond villains
how to
giving them
train
kind of
your own AI.
how to train your AI
Yeah.
instruction.
And yeah,
And then-
the information that maybe COVID is dangerous is an info hazard also.
Maybe the COVID vaccine is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, not COVID.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, maybe the vaccine might be dangerous, is a dangerous thing to make public in some sense.
In the sense that it could cause people
To not get vaccinated.
all make the decision not to get vaccinated, and then we never have herd immunity, and then
Yeah.
we all die of COVID.
Yeah.
basically Neb's argument was that knowing that information hazards exist, he cannot rule out the possibility that people who had that information that the vaccine is dangerous or will turn out to have been dangerous.
That's not
That
my
they-
argument.
That's not your argument.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not saying that because info hazards exist, that means there's a chance that actually the COVID vaccine is dangerous or whatever. I think the COVID vaccine has a chance, a probability of being dangerous, like, you know, without needing to rely on the evidence, the existence of info hazards. The reason I bring up info hazards is I'm saying it's not easy for me to discuss this topic with people because, like, me going, like, if I went to my mom and say, oh, you know, like, maybe there might be dangerous side effects from getting the COVID vaccine, which is a true statement. She's going to misinterpret that and over or underestimate it, and then she won't get vaccinated, you know? Whereas, like...
Oh! Gotcha.
Whereas...
That's right.
because
We were talking about how before everybody else got vaccinated, you wanted them all to get vaccinated. So you didn't want to explain your reasoning because your plan depended on everyone else getting vaccinated.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
But, like, the thing is, I'm admittedly self-interested. Like, I don't hide the fact that I'm self-interested. And...
Yeah, what is that? What political position is that?
But the thing is, like, I don't intend to be mean or trick people, right? I'm saying, like, here's what I think is the best. Like, if everyone were perfectly rational, I'd be happily, you know, openly explain my position on COVID, and, like, this is why I was worried about getting vaccinated. These arguments might apply to you, they might not apply to you, and you know, maybe you might need to make your own independent decision on whether to get vaccinated. So, like, all that I would have been fine, but because I don't trust people to make the right decisions, that's where I say, like, I can only talk about this with, like, a certain select set of people, because informing that, like, because I want most people to get vaccinated, like, because, like you said, my plan depends on that. Like, and like for example, my mom does go out in public and interact with people, so it's absolutely not feasible for her to, like, not get the vaccine.
Right. And you also want, you'd have to trust that people would be transparent with you about what they did.
Right.
And that they wouldn't, for example, lie about having been vaccinated.
Right.
It's very complicated. So, but, like, politically, is it, like, Ayn Randian? What is it? What is your...
I don't know, like, because there's a lot of, I don't know that much about politics, so I don't necessarily know exactly what Ayn Randian implies. The thing is, so, you know, earlier I said I didn't want to get into it, so it's okay to get into it now, I think, because the old topic has started dying out. I didn't want to, like, confuse it by getting too many topics.
Sure.
So I used to think I was very libertarian, because a lot of what the libertarians, like, when someone says, you know, what is libertarianism, and the idea that people and possibly corporations should be free to do what they want if everyone involved consents to it and there's no bad externalities, like, you know, like pollution or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. But then when I see like stereotypes about what libertarians are like, you know, of like the police officer has to put a quarter into his car to turn on the siren and things like that, I'm like, no, that's not what I'm not what I'm in favor of, right? You know, and so that's why I said, so maybe I'm not libertarian, because I don't agree with the negative stereotypes, even though when someone explains plainly, you know, the definition, I said that sounds fine to me.
Gotcha.
So maybe I'm more liberal, I don't know, because, like, I do care about, I do think, like, healthcare, for example, socialized healthcare is a good idea, which is not very libertarian, I believe, right?
It is definitely not libertarian. Interesting. Okay. Socialist libertarian.
I think so. The thing is, like, it seems like liberal or socialist might be the better, because basically the underlying principle that led me to libertarianism is the idea that consenting adults who aren't harming anyone should be able to do what they want.
Okay.
So when someone says like you can't sell your rights to vote or something like that, I'm like, why not? If everyone consents to it, that seems fine to me. And that's like a very libertarian point of view, the idea that you can sell your votes, you know.
Right. What if? How do you manage the tragedy of the commons problem?
I don't have a like here's the solution to tragic commons, because I mean I think it's like case by case in a sense, right? Like if you give me a concrete problem, we can talk about ways to fix it, and probably it's difficult and there is no good way. But
Well, okay. How about this? How do you solve the problem of socializing healthcare if everybody makes the decision consentingly that they don't want to pay for healthcare?
if everybody says like I'm willing to not pay this particular tax, say, and in exchange I don't get a healthcare card, I guess, then I guess there's no socialized healthcare, and then because everybody consented to it, so then nobody gets it. I think that's like a bad idea, like, you know. But if that's what everybody says,
the problem is not what everybody says. The problem is like the sort of herd immunity problem, right? If only billionaires, for example, say they won't pay because they're like, I've got plenty of money.
That's not going to work, right?
Right. Or if only, if healthy people say, well, I don't want to pay.
Yeah.
And only sick people say, well,
so
I do.
My at the object level, so not in terms of principles, my thing is like, well, too bad, you have to pay.
Right. So that's not libertarian.
Yeah. So maybe I'm not libertarian.
Interesting.
But like a lot of times I say things and people are like, oh yeah, that's libertarian. You know what you're saying. I'm like, okay, if you guys say so, then I guess I'm libertarian. But then other things I say, there, it turns out it's not libertarian. So I say, okay, so I guess I'm not libertarian.
You're a libertarian socialist. I love it. All right. Fantastic.
Let's see. Emmy said it would have been astronomically irresponsible to outright say at the time that the vaccine might be dangerous. Yep. Every medication does. Some actively harm you, like cancer treatments. That's true. 100% public policy, that more an issue with labels in general, socialism and socialist humanism. Yeah, I need to, like, it's one of these topics I'm not very informed about, so I guess I would, if I cared to discuss it more, I would need to like learn what people mean by these labels, socialism, libertarianism, and so on.
Right. Might not be worth it.
I remember sometimes it's like people, like I would get randomly called by someone who's doing like a survey or a census or something like that, right? And they're like, are you Caucasian or Asian? I'm saying I'm Asian, and it's like, are you East Asian? Are you South? I'm like, I said I don't know what any of that is. I'm like Chinese Vietnamese, basically.
I'll tell you where I'm from.
Yeah, I don't know what East Asian or Southeast Asian, or I don't know what any of that is.
Right.
I have to go learn that, I guess, if I want to answer. But I didn't want to learn it like just for your survey, So what I'm willing to tell you, I'm a mix of Chinese and Vietnamese, and so up to you to figure out where that fits into your labels, like
figure out where that goes. That's hilarious.
And he says, hence my socialist humanism: do what we like as long as we aren't harming others, but also take into consideration what harming others means, such as refusing to pay taxes or being a parent getting high all the time. Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
I think people who study politics say that your like your financial views and your social views might be on sort of like different axes.
Yeah.
And, like people are actually we don't fit very well into the boxes, most of us.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah.
By the way, before we move too far away from the topic we were on earlier, there was a research paper about how generally people who are ascribed to conspiratorial thinking are generally believed to be resistant to rational argument. Like you can't have a debate or whatever with such a person, or like trying to debate with such a person is ineffective at changing their minds or their belief.
Oh, like the backfire effect?
Yeah, among others.
Yeah.
And there's a recent paper saying maybe that's not true because large language models apparently can convince people with conspirational ideas that their beliefs may be false by, like, I can't remember if they said like 20% or 60% or something like that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that if you have to give the large language model not only the person's beliefs but also like their social demographics information, and then they can construct like a tailored counter argument, I guess.
Yeah. The idea that anybody is unpersuadable is unlikely. Right? Like, we evolved to be uniquely persuadable. Some people in the book, The Enigma of Reason, some people have said that like our reasoning faculty actually developed to help us better persuade other people, by kind of being able to figure out what arguments would best play in front of a small group of people so that we could persuade others of our ideas and be persuaded of other people's ideas.
Well, you would think there'd be like an arms race effect, right? Where you then learn to evolve to be more resistant to other people's persuasion.
Well, there is very little benefit to being resistant to other people's persuasion.
Well, I mean, it depends, I guess, like how common sociopaths are in your population, maybe. Like,
Exactly. That's one possible exception would be if you have a huge number of sociopaths, but we generally don't, and we manage sociopaths through gossip rather than through being unpersuadable. Sociopaths actually are quite good at persuading us. So there actually hasn't been an arms race. We've become better at both being persuadable and persuading others, surprisingly. And in fact, the biggest arguments between people are usually between people who are very, very closely aligned,
yeah,
rather than
there's
between people
the
who are
stereotypical joke about like, two like people of a certain religion, like,
yeah,
they're the same denomination, the same church or something like that, but then one tiny difference, and then
Right.
like, die, you traitor.
yeah. And they split off and form their own church. Yeah. And you know, the history of religion is basically just a bunch of that.
Whereas they tolerate like atheists or whatever, like, you know, whatever.
Right.
They just, that guy's just weird. Like, this guy who believes
Yeah.
everything that I believe except for one small detail.
Except for whether or not, you know, I should eat meat on this one day of the year. Yeah. And so anyway, so the idea that people who have conspiracy theories aren't persuadable isn't very persuasive.
Okay,
They just
that's
might need
interesting.
a different type of
'Cause
persuasion.
I haven't done the research into this, but like the study, you know, when they do the abstract or the background in the paper, they talk as if it's a given that everyone's accepted that people with conspiracy theories are not persuadable by rational arguments. And then they say, but this is wrong, and here's my evidence, right? You know?
Right. They are highly vulnerable to the backfire effect, which is that if you give them a argument that you think is persuasive, that contains a lot of facts, you'll actually talk them further into their views. But you've just presented it wrong, and large language models are better than you.
Yeah, that was so.
And we shouldn't get rid of AI.
One of
and
the takeaways
Why
there was,
are we trying to wave the wand?
was the idea that AIs have reached like superhuman persuasive abilities, in the same way that they're like superhuman at arithmetic, for example, right? Like they can multiply 10,000 digit numbers together, and humans can't.
Which humans cannot. Yeah.
And they can persuade people with conspiracy theories, whereas humans cannot. You know,
Right. Some people are actually quite good at persuading people who believe in conspiracy theories, they become like cult deprogrammers, for example.
Okay.
What's hard is that they often don't know how they're doing it. And we don't know how large language models are doing it probably either
Right.
yet. Yeah. On that note,
You're going to conspire to end the stream.
I'm going to persuade you that it is a good idea. I was on time, so we have to
You
end
were
on time.
Look at my beautiful diagram of the cosine. No, this is the
It looks
cicada.
I don't think
The
anyone
other one
could.
was the
the
cosine. This is the cosine.
Gotcha.
No, wait, this isn't even the cosine thing. This is the directionality of gender or something like that.
Obviously, yeah. Yeah,
All right, let me
it's
close
beautiful.
this.
Unmistakable.
Don't save.
Definitely save it. No, definitely save it.
I didn't save
It's
it.
your new avatar.
Oops. And then let me get the ending screen thing.
Were we just chatting today?
Yeah, we were just chatting, and there's more just chatting stuff.
Okay.
Apparently, I'm accumulating more just chatting topics than we can
Oh,
get through.
goodness.
So are we gonna become a just chatting stream from now on? Let me give one more.
No.
What time is it? How much am I holding you? Let me give you one
You're
more.
not. I'm just tired. Okay.
No, but I am giving over by like 2 minutes apparently.
Yeah.
The mirror test, right? You know that is where you paint
Yeah.
like on a chimpanzee or
Pigeons.
something like that.
Yeah.
You paint a dot on their head when they don't know this. Like you do it secretly somehow. So they're just walking around and then they see a mirror, and then they're like, "Oh, cool!" Like they've never seen a mirror before, so they don't know exactly what it is, but they're like, "This is cool." And then they see the dot on their head from the reflection in the mirror, right? And the question is, do they realize that what they're seeing in the mirror is themselves versus like some other animal or something like that? And the idea is, if when they see the dot, they touch their own forehead, they're like, "Oh, what the heck is this?" If they touch their own forehead, they realize they're seeing their own reflection, right? Because if you saw like
Well,
a
if
random animal,
If they try to take the dot off their own forehead, not just touch their forehead.
okay.
But yeah.
But because the idea is like, if you just saw a random animal that had a dot on their forehead, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's me," and then try to examine your own dot, right, or see if you had.
Right.
You would just say like, "That's some weird animal somewhere there that has a dot for some reason on its head."
Right.
Apparently, snakes can pass the mirror test now.
That is amazing.
And the thing is, they don't do it via vision. What they did is they took the scent of the snake and modified it slightly. And then the snakes show more interest when they smell a slightly modified version of their own scent than they do if they smell another snake's scent, a slightly modified version of another snake's scent, or just some random other smell like olive oil or whatever. They can recognize that this is their smell, but it's wrong somehow.
That is freaking amazing. Animals are cool.
Yeah. But it's
That's what
also
I got.
like, it's one of those things, at least for me, it's like I would not have thought to test that, right? So it's like this idea of like, how do we expand the mirror test for minds that don't think the way we do, like that aren't very visual, for example?
Yeah. There are whole books on that.
Do you want to recommend one?
Oh, you could read, there's a book called An Immense World by Ed Yong, which is all about how different senses work in different animals. And then
Imminent?
there's a book, Imminent, no,
Imminent.
Immense.
Immense.
Immense
Okay.
World.
IMMEN.
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah.
What is that? Where I have to stop and replay the word in my head to figure out where I was? Is there a cognitive thing for that?
You're just kind of like replaying it in your phonological loop.
Okay.
And then there's a book by Franz de Waal called Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are?
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. So I would start with those ones if you're interested in the topic.
All right,
An
sounds
Immense
good.
World and
Are we smart
Franz de
enough,
Waal
etc.
yeah, etc. etc.
All right, thank you everyone for tuning in. We did a Just Chatting stream today. We had some plastic duck stuff playing in the background. My regular schedules is in the top left corner of the screen. Every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. That's about 2 hours ago in your time zone. We have the Steph's Thursday stream, where I guess nowadays we just chat. We used to play games. We might come back to it.
No,
but-
we play like hidden object games and chat.
Yeah, although we haven't done that in a while. We've been just chatting.
That's because you've been lax.
No, it's because I like. So this, I don't know if I want to get into it. I've been like thinking about doing more. So AI can generate video, like persuasive videos now. Not in the sense of like fooling you, but in the sense of like you have a topic. Like tell me about AI singularity, and it generates like a 2-minute video tutorial on the topic that you then
Good lord.
upload to YouTube and then gain views for, right? Like you're an intellectual who wrote the script.
Okay.
And I'm like, I want to get in on that. So now I'm collecting topics that I find interesting. And so that's why...
That you can make AI videos?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point where I actually make AI videos, but like, I'm thinking about it, right? Like it's in
Okay.
but like I'm also bouncing the ideas off of you, Steph, and the viewers, you know, to work through the ideas for myself even.
This sounds like you are outsourcing your labor to underpaid mechanical.
Yep, which we can talk about more next time. Every Saturday, 6
Alright.
p.m. Pacific. That's about 3.5 hours ago in your time zone. We have the solo Saturday stream, which I haven't been doing lately, but I promise I'm trying to get back into. We got the Discord. Join the Discord for more for updates to the schedule and any announcements for all scheduled streams. And I think that's it. Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of Cat Parade while I look for Sunter Raid.
Good night, everyone.